Hi, everyone. My name is Christy Statz, and I work with Bibles, Badges, and Business of the National Immigration Forum, and I'm here in Stowe, Ohio, my hometown. I'm so grateful for all of you joining us today from around Ohio for our conversation about agriculture and immigration. It's such an important subject, and it's one that a lot of folks have not waded in if they're not in the industry. So we've brought some industry specialists from different corners of Ohio to share about their work, about the economic needs, about their work with immigrants. And then we're going to do a little spotlight of one town, Orrville, Ohio, and they're going to be able to talk about the dynamics in their community. I'm here with my friend Craig, and I always say your name wrong, Regelbruch, who is going to open us up a little bit today. He is the Vice President of American Hort. And before we start, we have a special guest with us today. I'm going to have Craig introduce her, but sit back. After each panel, we will have some question and answer. So if you have questions, feel free to send them in the chat, and we'll be paying attention to those and try to field as many of those as we are able. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Christy, thank you. Really appreciate it. And it's great to see you again. I think the last time we came together to have an immigration conversation about the imperative of moving forward, we were together in Westerville, Ohio. And it's pre-pandemic, obviously, seems like so long ago, but it's great to be back together again. As you said, Craig Regelbruch, and we can do the hard G or the soft G, fine either way. And I've been working for many years with American Hort, which is the national trade organization that represents the greenhouse and nursery industry. We are, for the record, an important one on this conversation. We are based in Columbus, Ohio, where in July of each year, we host the largest trade show and industry exposition and educational conference of its type in North America. So glad to be Ohio-based. I personally am DC-based because of the policy work that we do, but we're grateful that our organization is Ohio-based and brings a lot of and helps to stimulate a lot of economic activity in the state capital. So. Again, we're here with a couple of our really good friends in the ag industry. I'll be introducing them shortly. Just want to mention, I wanted to thank a couple of organizations, the Ohio Dairy Producers Association, their national counterpart, National Milk Producers Federation, and our good friends at U.S. Apple Association for working with us to pull together the talent that you'll be hearing from shortly. But before that, presuming that the audio video gods are smiling on us, we've got an opportunity to hear a few words from a key member of your state congressional delegation in Washington, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, who represents the 9th District. She's a native Toledoan, and that district, includes Toledo, but also stretches well east from there, right along the shores of beautiful Lake Erie. Congresswoman Kaptur is one of the longest serving members. She's not quite the dean, but she's getting close to being the dean in the House of Representatives, having served there since the early 1980s. She serves on the very important and powerful Appropriations Committee and also on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I got to have a bit of a deep dive conversation with Congresswoman Kaptur relevant to this issue back on in early June of 2018, so 3 years ago, when a household name family business in our industry was the unfortunate target of an ICE raid. The practical effect of that raid was to watch dozens of good people, good hardworking people who many of them had been longtime employees in this horticultural operation in Congresswoman Kaptur's district, taken into custody with their wrists zip tied behind their backs. And, ultimately, I think the most important part of that narrative is that nobody won. The local economy didn't win. The workers certainly didn't. The business itself lost tremendous talent from longtime and very dedicated employees. So it was a no-win situation. And so when Congresswoman Capter and I came together, her question was, why can't we solve this problem? And I think that that's a nice way to start this conversation, because finally, after a couple of years wandering in the desert, we believe that there could be an opportunity to solve this problem. And the House of Representatives has taken an important step to move us down that journey. So with that said, would like to welcome Congresswoman Capter, and presuming you can hear us and we can hear you, we would really welcome hearing a bit about your views on this ever important issue.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Craig, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is actually Courtney Harishka, the Congresswoman's agricultural legislative assistant. I apologize. The Congresswoman just notified me she somehow got knocked into some very personal issue at the moment that unfortunately is barring her from attending. And we are so apologetic at the moment. This was extremely not expected. She was very excited to join. But I'm sorry, unfortunately, she will not be able to join today. However, she wanted me just to share just a couple of things with you, if that's okay. The Congresswoman is very excited for this event, as I said, and she's mortified and just very upset that she could not join you. But she loves this event because, again, working with Craig, she's so appreciated what he has brought to the forefront and what they discussed during the course raid. And again, how is this ongoing? Why does this keep on going? To continue that dialogue is very important. The Congress has now passed twice the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. And I can tell you the Congresswoman Capter both times has talked with members of Congress, the sponsors, the stakeholders of this bill. And, she has said that this, unfortunately, as though she has supported it, and yes, of course, she voted in support of it, more needs to be done. She is continuing to work with the stakeholders. She's continuing working at federal level, with USDA, with members of Congress, with people such as O'Loughlin, Newhouse. She's working with them to assert an advisory council at USDA with small local farmers and farm labor, so that they have a continuous seat at the table and can really discuss their issues and target what is most important to them, be it procurement, be it issues, be it labor issues, be it, safety issues regarding DHS. She really wants a holistic approach to really protecting the farmers and the farm labor, because, this was a compromise, of course, the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. And, whenever you compromise, everyone wins and everyone loses, but, at least something as good has come out of it. So she's really, really, really looking forward to working in Congress and with stakeholders and local stakeholders. That's why she's so happy to see people such as Kathy and Bill on here to, taking a local approach to Ohio agriculture. She's very, very appreciative of that. But again, I apologize that she hasn't been able to be with you on this Zoom. But again, just know she is with you and in spirit and mind at the moment on this particular issue. Thank you so very much.
Kathy or Courtney, thank you, and please give our regards to the Congresswoman. Thank her for her vote to move the House bill forward, which is an important watershed moment, I think, in the evolution of the issue. So please thank her for that. I'm going to exercise moderator's prerogative and share just a little bit of a sort of a local report that I ran across in sort of related to my industry. And I think it speaks to some of the themes around jobs and economic opportunity that are connected to this very important conversation. And to set that up, living in Washington, D.C., I have experienced numerous times popping into the nearest grocery store, which happens to be a Whole Foods for better or for worse. A wonderful store, not necessarily the low-cost provider, but anyway, it's always struck me that when you go through the produce aisle, so much of the beautiful produce that you see, the cucumbers and peppers and tomatoes, have product of Canada stickers on them. And I've always kind of scratched my head and said, well, what's going on here that we can't make this happen on our side of the lake? What's really interesting, I've gotten to know the folks at a now local producer in Northern Ohio called Mucci Farms. And by the end of this year, their new investment in greenhouse infrastructure in the Congresswoman's district near Port Huron, Ohio, is going to be $100 million. A total of over 3 million square feet of controlled environment production space is either built or planned. 250 employees. The bulk of those are temporary and seasonal given the nature of the industry, but also 30 full-time jobs, and clearly a big job multiplier effect in the construction of these greenhouses, the infrastructure and the maintenance, and in all the things that happen around the operation. And as I've gotten to know the folks at Mucci Farms, what I have continually heard is that for them, the weakest link in the chain is that the temporary labor program, as we know at H2A in the United States, is a creaky, dysfunctional thing compared to the Canadian program that they're very much more used to farming also on the other side of Lake Erie. And so in terms of the comparative advantages that allow them to make this kind of investment in the United States, the one cloud hanging over this whole effort is access to a truly efficient temporary worker program that supplements the year-round jobs that Ohioans are filling. So with that, we're going to switch over to our panel, and we'll go in the following order. First, Bill Dodd, who's going to give us some remarks on behalf of his own operation and also the broader apple industry in this country, very iconic industry, obviously. Then we'll go to Kathy Davis, who with her family runs a dairy operation. And then finally, we'll go to Kyle Natorp, who runs a diversified horticultural operation in the southern part of the state. So with that, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your operation. Tell us, how this issue impinges on the success of your operation and the larger industry that you're representing.
Okay, thank you, Craig. I'm a fourth generation apple grower. I reside west of Cleveland, about 35 miles. Amherst, Ohio is our mailing address. We're actually in Henrietta Township. I came home to the family farm in 1983. That's pretty weird because I don't feel like I'm that old, but I've been home for quite a while. And our business in my career has changed tremendously. We are not the largest grower. We're not the largest growing state. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of diversity within our apple growing group. There's still plenty of apples grown. For the small family farms that are in Ohio to survive, we have had to do different things. Agritourism probably being the biggest boost to our economic lives. And I guess when I make my point about immigration, that's probably one of the biggest areas that needs to be addressed for Ohio apple growers. And that is the rules need to be a little bit more relaxed. For our situation, we do weddings on our property. We have a liquor license. We do hay rides. We do pick your own apples. And so our workforce needs, while similar to the rest of the larger apple growing areas, are a little bit different because we need people who can do a little bit more diversified things than just farm work. Maybe some landscaping to make our property look more presentable for the weddings, things like that. So I guess the biggest comment I have to make is the system is kind of antiquated and needs to be addressed. And I think we all agree and know that. And so as we work through this, there's some special needs that need to be addressed. And I guess I'll make another point, and that is the state legislature in Ohio has recognized that agritainment is farming. And so they've passed legislature to protect us and allow us to include that as part of our CAUV protection, things like that across the board. even localities can't come and say, well, pick your own apples isn't farming. And so I think kind of the same thing needs to happen among the immigration is we need to really take a look at what needs are. I'm sure the dairy folks are going to say the same things, that sometimes it's not seasonal anymore. It's year round. And very excited to be included in this. And that's basically the comments that I have is things just need to be looked at with maybe a clean piece of paper and start anew. And I'm excited about the House getting things rolling, and we're really looking forward to the Senate tackling this and hopefully getting something done.
Thank you, Bill. The House legislation that's already been referenced is called the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. It was first passed in December in 2019 and was the result of a really difficult stakeholder negotiation. So, different points of view coming together and having to give to get. And as the Congresswoman staffer already alluded, any compromise by definition doesn't leave anybody truly happy. But everybody gains some ground. And I think it's really notable that the House got something done, because the last time prior to this piece of legislation, passed at the end of December 2019, and then picked up and repassed early this year, because there was an opportunity to do so under House rules to sort of expedite the repassage of it, positions us really, really well now, because it positions us. I mean, it had been more than 30 years since the House of Representatives had touched this issue and succeeded at moving a bill. So it puts us now in this position where agriculture can be part of the conversations that are going on in the Senate that are touching on concerns around management of the border, touching on concerns around the status and fate of the young folks known as Dreamers, and various others. So I think we are well positioned with good, thoughtful leadership to be part of something coming forward. I think the last comment I'll make, Bill, I heard in your remarks sort of a yearning for some common sense. And I think an example of common sense that did make it through to the finish line in the House was, under the current H-2A system, if you need 25 workers at the beginning of the season and another 25 workers, a month or two later as the season ramps up, you really practically have to file multiple applications with all the associated costs. And a feature of the House bill, which is a modernization that we strongly supported, allows for what's called staggered entry. You still have to advertise for and hire American workers, but presuming that you are approved by the Labor Department to supplement your workforce with seasonal foreign workers, you can bring them in over time as the seasons ramp up. And that's something that the current system, it just really doesn't allow very well. So anyway, appreciate your pleas for common sense. We might hear a little more of that as we hear from our other friends. Kathy, you're coming from I'm more used to the chlorophyll-based side of life, and you're on the four-legged side of life with cows, with dairy cows. Tell us a little bit about your family dairy and how you see both at the family dairy level, but also the broader industry that you're helping to represent here today, how you all see this issue and what's wrong with the current system in a sense.
Well, first, let me repeat what Bill said. I'm very happy to be part of this conversation, but I am Kathy Davis. I am 7th generation here on our family farm, and I currently work with my parents and my aunt and uncle and my cousin. We have about 25 full and part-time employees, including our family, and 9 of those are Latino help. It is very important for the dairy industry to have a safe, legal, effective, and efficient way to bring in foreign workers, because we need the work done. We need the work done to help with the continuation of the family farm. And we need that work done so that our consumers can have the products as safely, as efficiently, and the quality that they're used to, but also at the prices that they have become accustomed to. And we need to do that with our workers. This also goes into the continuation of the family farm. And then when we look to plan ahead how do we do things? Right now, we're having a conversation of how to update our milking facilities. And if we know that we're going to have labor, we'd probably go one way. If we don't think we're going to have the personnel available, then we may have to go another way. And that definitely changes how we're looking at this and how we need to finance things that go on. So, and when you talk to other dairy producers in the area, it's not just a large farm problem or a small farm problem. It can be a mom and pop out there doing it, but our season is 24/7, 365. So you need to fill on all those days. So they may just need 1 or 2 people to help them out, or the larger people may need more depending on what's going on. But it's something that's across all dairy farms in Ohio, or most that I talk with. To look at this a little differently, I was also a Rotary Exchange student way back when I was in high school, and we won't go far how back that was. But you can have a great sense of incorporation into the community when you can participate and come, I guess, out of the shadows to be a part of your community. And if you can work with other people within that community, it can help form personal connections and debunk a lot of the unfounded prejudices we have against immigrant labor. And we got to all remember that at one time we were immigrants. So I think those are things we need to keep in mind. Definitely need to have a very fact-based and sound rationale for what we're doing here. And level-headedness, if we can have that, I think that'll go a long way. Thank you.
Great. Appreciate those remarks very, very much. You know, it's worth noting, I have a lot of statistics rattling around in my brain, and we know a fair amount about the hired workforce that provides the helping hands that feed America and keep our farms operating. And we know that there are about 2.4 million people who are hired each year to work on farms. We know that almost three quarters of those hardworking individuals are foreign born. As many as roughly half of them are here without good immigration status, which is a problem that we have acknowledged for years and we have attempted to resolve for years. Now, at the individual employer level, you're not aware of that status or lack thereof because everybody is looking at documents that appear genuine on their face and doing everything they're supposed to do. But we understand the background reality of it all. But I think the important thing, I mean, the pandemic, for all of the negatives around it, if a ray of hope can come from what we've just lived through as a country with the pandemic, it's that it has shown a bright light on just how essential these workers are. They were classified properly, in our view, as essential workers. And they have contributed mightily, you know, continuing to work hard during the pandemic. I know we as employers have been working very, very hard to make sure that that folks that can continue to work and contribute with their health and well-being protected. It's been a difficult journey for all of us, but I think you said it, Kathy. You said it very well when you essentially said these folks are really just like we are. They have hopes and dreams and aspirations and fears just like we do, and they have contributed mightily to the building of our country and to the building of our industries. And we need to meet them halfway, which I think is arguably what this legislative effort's all about. Kyle, let's shift to you. You are the next generation in a multi-generational business in Ohio horticulture. How do you see the issues?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Like I said, my name is Kyle Natorp, and I'm the president of Natorp's Inc. and the William A. Natorp Company. We operate a landscape division, retail plant store, and a 300-acre wholesale nursery here in Mason, Ohio, which is just north of Cincinnati. Like most businesses in our industry, we're multi-generational family business. We've been around for over 100 years, and my brother and I are the fourth generation. I do have to say I feel like the young kid, with Kathy saying she's 7 generations in. That's fantastic. But we're excited to continue on the family tradition. You know, I went to school and I grew up right down the street from our nursery. our family's been an employer here in the Mason area for for 3 generations. We have 35 full-time employees in our nursery operation, and at the peak in the spring season, we get up to about 66 employees. Our industry, including the greenhouse, nursery, farming, landscape operations, and garden center business in Ohio, contributes $14 billion to the economy each year. And everything we do is dependent on a experienced and seasonal and regular workforce. In our part of the country, especially here in Mason, we've had a really hard time finding people to work, especially for the seasonal jobs. There's so many job openings and opportunities here for many years before things happened with COVID. It has been a challenge for us for a long time. When we pay a starting wage of over $15 an hour for workers with basically no experience, we're happy to train them if they come in, but we still have a hard time getting people to apply. So H-2A is an important part of our business. Since most of our jobs are seasonal, even if we do get employees to apply, generally they're here for 1 season, and then we have to start all over again and hire a new employee to fill that slot the following season. Interestingly enough, Senator Portman actually worked for us for a season when he was in college. Apparently he found something more exciting to do than be in the nursery business. So we had to rehire that position at that time too. And that was going back quite a few years ago. We can't survive without access to a legal, regular, consistent seasonal workforce. And then horticulture, interesting, Craig, as you know, 60% of our business takes place in a 10-week period in spring. So it's a very condensed season, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that time frame. H-2A is necessary for us to be able to staff up and ramp up during that time, which helps keep the full-time employees that we do have employed around. And without having those people seasonally, we'd have a hard time keeping those full-time people, or even providing opportunities for growth for that rest of our labor force. The program's got many challenges, and the reforms that have taken place here with the House bill, the Farm Workforce, if I say that right, Modernization Act, seem like they're heading in the right direction. We'd certainly like to see the Senate put something together and see Senator Portman and Senator Brown be part of that bipartisan effort to come up with some reforms that'll work for our industry and the other 2 industries represented here today. So we can all make it to our 4th, 5th, 6th, I guess 8th generations going forward.
Yep, it's win-win if we can get this done. So thank you, Kyle. I mean, it's fun to think about all those years ago, Senator Portman working on a landscape crew. But you know what? After the relatively lengthy tour of duty he's done in politics, he might pop up again and be ready to go back to a landscape crew. I think it would probably be a nice change of pace, good for the physical and mental health. So don't be surprised if Senator Portman is a worker referral one of these days as you're seeking domestic workers first before turning to the programs. So I think this is, in a sense, kind of burying the lead, but and we're gonna, if there are any questions coming in from the audience for our panelists, Christy, keep an eye on that. We'll go there in just a moment. We have a couple of minutes for that, but I would just sort of reiterate that the House passed bill, Farm Workforce Modernization Act, in our view, is a good foundation for moving forward. We'd love to see some refinements. We have a sense of what those look like and are talking with the Senate about them, but the base bill has all the pillars that are needed to solve the problem. Has the pillar that is about stabilizing current workforce, paths forward to legal status. It has the pillar that's about future workforce needs, including very important, Kathy, in your world, obviously opening up the opportunity for year-round workers to be able to come in on a legal visa basis. It also provides expanded legal immigration opportunities to the future, which I think for dairy in particular are going to be super important. And then for people who are worried about enforcement, the bill includes the phasing in of improvements to and the phasing in of the mandatory E-Verify program for agricultural hiring, so that we can use all the available tools to have integrity in the hiring process and have the tools to ensure that we've got a legal workforce. It's kind of interesting. Polling came out about a week ago, an Ipsos poll came out that was looking both at border issues, but also paths forward toward resolving the broader challenges. And it was very interesting to note that when asked about some of the specific populations of folks who are not here with proper immigration status, farm workers as essential workers polled the highest in terms of the degree of public support on both sides of the aisle for paths to legal status. 85% of Democrats supported creating paths to earned legal status for farm workers. 61% of Republicans, a lower number, but still a significant majority, supported resolving this problem with paths toward legalization. 71% of independents. So, pretty clearly the public support is there. I think if our good Senators Brown and Portman lean into this issue, Senator Portman particularly is really a subject matter expert as the ranking Republican on the Homeland Security Committee. He's he's a subject matter expert on the border dynamics, but also how the E-Verify program works. And so having his expertise and his support for taking steps forward would seem to make tons of sense. With that comment, Christy, I'll ask you, have we received any questions that we want to field to the panelists?
We have not yet.
Okay, that's all right. We've got a few more minutes if folks do have something that you want to ask of Bill, Kathy, or Kyle. Kathy, I'm going to ask you an off-script question, which is, where you did a study abroad. Where were you?
I spent 11 months in France with the Rotary.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I very much appreciated the comment you made about, we're all at the end of the day human, and we actually share a whole lot more in common than we might otherwise recognize. So any final, actually I see one question coming in, which I'll take a bit of a stab at for starters. And then if there are comments from the panelists, there was a question asked about what changes we would like to see to the House passed bill. The bulk of those changes, I think it's fair to say from an employer perspective, fall within Title II. There's a few that kind of rise to the top of the list. One of them relates to the scope of the sort of definitions of agriculture. I'm not sure this is the passion or expertise of anybody in our Ohio panel, but I will tell you, for example, that in many parts of the country where you have a real density of production of a commodity that goes into a packing house, and so if a packing house is packing apples for a bunch of different producers, the packing house workers are not technically considered agricultural workers, even though they're so closely associated and their work is essential to the survival of the orchard. So that would be an example where we would like to see a somewhat broader definition of agriculture. Another, in the whole House negotiation process, lots of focus on trying to figure out how to make the temporary worker program, as we now know it, H-2A, more affordable, which led to conversations around how wages are calculated, but also around other things that contribute to the overall cost. I think it's fair to say in the House bill, we made some gains on the cost picture, and some measures that I think improve the predictability for employers with respect to what they're going to have to pay in the upcoming season. H-2A wages are substantially higher than minimum wage or than market wages, but a lot of times the employer barely knows before the season starts what the actual wage is going to be, and they may be committed to business planning and contracts. So I remember, Kyle, you might know the exact year, but I remember a couple of years ago, the wage rate in Ohio jumped by 9.5% in 1 year, whereas wages in the general economy were increasing somewhere between 2% and 3%. So very, very difficult to plan for.
Yeah, I would say, Craig, it changes every year and it varies that percentage, but yeah, I think it was 2 years ago, I think it jumped 9.5%. And, we're in Ohio now at $15.31 an hour is the H2A rate that we're paying this year.
Yeah, plus the requirement to provide housing, transportation, daily subsistence. So all those things. So I think there's a conversation around the cost picture. There's a conversation around, I mean, there are visa caps for the year-round portion. There's some question whether those visa caps are really adequate to meet American employers' needs ultimately. So that is probably more in Kathy's wheelhouse. That's an issue that's also on the table. I'm going to ask the panelists if they have any thoughts on the next question that has come in, which is, from your view, how do we build the bipartisan support to move legislation? I'll withhold the editorial comments despite the temptation and just say, this is probably actually a good place for us to wind up. So I'll ask each of you, what thoughts do you have on how we build the bipartisan support to move forward? Anyone want to be first?
I can go ahead. I think we just need to keep reaching out to our representatives in a very positive fashion, letting them know that we need, letting them know what our neighbors need, and putting it out there. Just keep talking with them. And panels like this are good. Things at the federal level within our own production associations is another way to leverage our support of it, and just keep on keeping on.
Kathy, I'll just offer, you mentioned Rotary, and I think a very, very productive pursuit for folks in your world is, to think about how can you influence networks that through chambers, through Rotary, through church groups, et cetera. So you've already alluded to that, but that's a great thing as well. Bill,
well, one of the things when we're involved in different organizations, my family, I probably teach more to the people on the library board than I do when I go to a Farm Bureau meeting. So anytime you can be out there changing ideas with the community at large, from the agricultural sense to another, is wonderful.
Great. Bill or Kyle, any thoughts?
Yeah, from my perspective, I've always thought that it works for both sides of the aisle, having a visa program that's functional, because it helps with the border issue. I mean, a lot of reasons people are crossing the border or to come here for jobs. So if they can come here legally through a system that's vetted, and they come in and they go back, it answers and solves a lot of those challenges. I think I just see it as a win-win for both sides.
Great, thanks. Bill, anything you want to add? Or
it's all about communication. We just need to tell our story. I may be biased, but I think we're pretty important. We all produce food. Can get away with without a lot of things in life, but food is not one of them. So I guess we just got to keep on working at it.
Yep. Thanks very much. I'm quickly, just in the minute or so that we've got remaining for our panel, we've been asked if a bill like Farm Workforce Modernization were to pass, what are some ways it would benefit all of our society? And I think, you just said it well. A healthy and stable and homegrown, if you will, food supply is really, frankly, a contributor to our national security as well as our economic security. Most of what we grow in this country and produce in high value labor intensive ag can be produced elsewhere. And, but yet if it's being produced elsewhere and all we're doing is importing, it doesn't improve our security. But I think it's also important to remember that for every farm worker job that we've got, the economic activity around us is creating 2 to 3 upstream, downstream jobs. So, jobs in the trucking industry, jobs in distribution, jobs in, all up and down with the services and supplies that farms are purchasing, and everything that happens when the product leaves the farm is creating economic opportunity that is sustaining entire communities. And that's really ultimately, I think, the societal benefit of ensuring that we've got a system that allows us to continue to successfully produce here. So. On that happy note, there's one last question on what can faith-based groups do, and I'm going to leave that because I think in our next panel we've got some folks on the faith side of the equation, and so we'll allow them to do that. So with that, I would like to thank each of you, Bill, Kathy, Kyle. I'd like to thank again the organizations that you've worked so closely with over the years, U.S. Apple, National Milk and Ohio Dairy Producers Association, and American Hort closer to home for Kyle. Thanks for taking the time to be with us, and we'd love it if you can stick along for a while. You're welcome to turn off your cameras, and we're going to turn it back over to Christy for the next portion of the program.
Thank you so much, guys. It was really great to hear from all of you. I'm going to invite Police Chief Matt Burbeck, Mayor Dave Handwerk, and Geraldo Nunez, who is the Director of Open Arms Hispanic Ministry. One of my favorite things to do in my work is to sit with leaders of communities and to get everyone together and to have a conversation. I do a lot of conversations about immigration, and I love just hearing the dynamics of one community working together. These folks are all in Orrville, Ohio. When I was meeting them through email, we were chit-chatting, and I had fond memories of Orrville because growing up, I'd go to church camp every year, and I didn't have great geography. I'm coming from Stowe, Ohio, but I knew we were really close to church camp. When we drove through Orrville, we had about 30 minutes to go. I think I figured out where my church camp was as a kid. But we're gonna just have them introduce themselves and then go through some questions about some of the relational dynamics of being in a community that has American folks who were born here and immigrants, and what this means to the economics of everything. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I'd love to start with Mayor Handwerk. Would you introduce yourself and how long you've lived in Orrville, a little of your background?
Sure. Thank you, Christy, for inviting us today. This has been really interesting to listen to. I've been in Orrville my whole life, went to high school here, graduated from Orrville. The only time I didn't live here was my college years when I went to Ohio State, and been back here teaching school for 32 years. I retired in 2007 and ran for mayor then, and this is my 4th term as mayor. So during those teaching years, I was 18 years on city council also, which helped me prepare for the mayor's job. Orrville's a special city, and I know everybody feels that way about their community, but we're a city of almost 9,000 people. And I don't know, do you want to ask the questions as we go through that you've had given us, or?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
have everyone else introduce themselves, and then I'll ask some of those, but if you have something prepared, I can let you jump into that. But let me introduce the other two, and then we'll get on to you.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, I would love that. Chief Burbeck, how long have you been in Orrville, and how long have you been working for the police?
So we're going to sound like a broken record down here, because just like the mayor, I was born here and graduated Orrville High School in 1988. And I, again, sounding like the mayor, except I went to the University of Akron for 3 years and met my wife down here. She's from a neighboring community, and came back to Orrville. Wasn't the plan when I graduated high school, but you think you know everything at 18. Then you do figure it out, and you think Orrville's a pretty great place to raise a family. So we had 2 kids, and they both graduated from Orrville High School as well. So that I graduated in 1988, and my 2 kids graduated in recent years. And that's the story. I became a police officer here in 1992. And you know, it was very exciting to come back to your own hometown and become a police officer here. There were a lot of challenges early on, but those challenges soon became advantages as you got older. But that's my story.
Wonderful. It's a good thing if it pulls you back. And Geraldo Nunez, go ahead. You've come a little further away, but you've come to love Orrville as well.
Yes. I will balance a little bit there. Actually, I'm an immigrant. I Brazilian American immigrant in this country. I came in here in 2000, yes, in 2000, and I came to Orrville in 2006. Okay, I'm a pastor, and I'm an executive director of Open Arms Hispanic Ministry. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to have me on this panel, and beside my friend Matt and Dave. Yeah, it's nice to be here. At Open Arms, we welcome the Hispanics in the community, and you help them on their material and spiritual needs. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, I'll go ahead and just ask. So Orrville is a town with immigrants, with native-born Americans. What's it been like for the three of you to navigate those dynamics and with folks working alongside one another?
I don't think it's even ever been a big issue. We seem to just all mesh together. And I think with me, when I think of that question, I worked in factories going through high school and college. I painted houses with my brother for 32 years while we were teaching. So we were doing a lot of that kind of physical work too. And I think the biggest thing is when somebody's working beside you, as long as they're doing their job, you don't care where they're from. And you get along with people, and it's worked out great. And I think for the most part, that's what I've seen in Orrville. We're Wayne County, and for those of you that were talking about the farming and apples and dairy, we're also very well known for dairy farming. So there's a lot of interest from our agricultural folks too in making this sort of thing work. But I think what I'm hearing, as far as allowing people to come in legally to work and then go back, that's fine if that's what they want. But to be honest with you, meeting people like Geraldo has made me want to just make it so we can make it easier for people to come here and stay. We need to make citizenship easier and faster for people. And this goes back into the 70s. We had a lot of Asian families that were brought into Orrville that churches adopted that came from Laos and Vietnam. And those folks have meshed very well in our community. And I think probably the biggest positive is our school system. We make it very well known that we welcome folks that from Hispanic backgrounds or any other backgrounds, and we have folks that can help them. I know as a teacher, I was always amazed at a little child of first grade, second grade, kindergarten, maybe couldn't even speak English, being dropped into a school system. And I can't imagine what that was like for them, but they did a great job and they always adapted very well. And many of them have grown up and stayed here and become very, very great citizens.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in there and say that, when we're posed that question about the challenges, we've been a diverse community for as long as I can recall. It's one of for most Orrvillians, I think that's a point of pride for us, is that we are a diverse community. And so I don't feel like we're new to, having different backgrounds move into our community. I think we're prepared for that. And actually, one of the things that I think is a hallmark of our community is we find solutions for people, and we solve problems and we figure those things out. Everybody benefits when you do that. When you can find a problem and you can find a solution for that, you unlock the future for that person whose problem you solved, and then you can welcome other folks who may be in a similar circumstance and you've already found that solution for them. And I will echo what the mayor says, because that starts with our school district. To be able to take non-English speaking students and help them achieve and assimilate is fantastic. That's the ticket right there. To have that baked into our community already is outstanding. So again, I just I'm proud that that's kind of the backbone of our community. Like the mayor said, if you're here for all the reasons that we even built this country for, to make a better life for your family, to be a good community member, to just want what's best for your community, your neighbors, your family, we need more people like that. Wherever we can find people that are willing to do the work, that are willing to contribute to society, that are willing to do these things, we don't need less of those people. We need more.
For myself, I praise the opportunity that God gave to me to be doing the work that I'm doing, to work with people that like a Chief Matt, the Mayor Dave. Why? Because when we have problems, we try to communicate with each other. Like I remember well when Chief Bilderbeck started his position as a chief of the police in Orrville, we had a meeting with Hispanics, we call a meeting with Hispanics and him and other officials, and we talked. We were having some miscommunication and we talked. And that is it started with Chief Bilderbeck, but we had the same relationship and Matt know that with Dino Carosa, that was our previous chief of police. And then now the Hispanics in Orrville, they feel safe because we can address problems. Sometimes we sit down, if it's not Chief Matt, you know, we have the captain that we talk, like it's just open communication. The same relationship with the Mayor Dave. I go, well, myself and other pastors, we pray at city council meetings, we pray at school, we have a good relationship with school. Like that just strengthens our relationship together and make the community grow.
Thank you, guys. So I'm going to save our questions for the end, but I'm noticing them come in. Feel free to keep sharing those. So what needs have you guys seen in the agricultural industry in your community? And then I know Mayor Handwerk, you wanted to know if we could talk about other job needs beyond just agriculture. So what have you guys seen from your different spheres of the city?
Well, I know for a fact that we have a lot of, you know, farming and dairy around here. And I know some of them have immigrant workers, and I know they need them. What I think a lot of people may not realize, though, especially since we're talking so much about the farming part of it today, is we're very diversified in industry here too. We have Smucker's home office here in Orrville, Smith Dairy, which used to be Smith Dairy, is now Smith Foods. All benefit from the farming that gets done in Orrville and in around surrounding areas. But we have a lot of other industries that are here that are begging for workers right now. We meet with our industry leaders every so often, and in the last 2 months, every time we've talked to one, it's, hey, I could hire 30 people right now if I could. We have Scott's here in town that, you know, sends truckload after truckload of mulch and fertilizers and all that stuff to all areas of Ohio and all over the country. And he said last week, I would hire 30 people now if I could. And this is skilled or unskilled. So you can step off the car and walk right in and get a job if you're able to do the work and willing to come to work. So that's why it's important, I think, for us to try and get this worked out. Like the congressman said, you know, why can't we fix this?
I would like to say, Chief Matt, just to keep going here what the mayor said. And like the mayor said about these 30 jobs, he sent me an email right away when he got these opportunities. I receive every single day calls from dairy farms, processing plants, all kinds of companies asking, begging for Hispanics to work. I said, where do you get the people? Like, you know, we have tons of jobs that people are begging for employers, and they know that the Hispanic, they have a good work ethic. You know, they are responsible, they come to work, and yeah, they really trust and they like these people. But now it's really difficult. For this reason, we need, the mayor said, not just for the agricultural part, we need for the whole immigrants here in the United States, that we know that we have between 11 to 15 million people that don't have a status on this country.
Yeah, and for my part, I'll just mention that I've never seen it like this, where even just driving in for this meeting, where you see signs out on the roadway for $13 an hour fast food jobs, and convenience stores that are looking for people. And yesterday I was in Worcester and I saw a sign for an Orrville industry over there, a yard sign over in Worcester. So obviously there are a lot of jobs that need filled, and they're not getting filled because it's to the point where I can't think of any place where they're not asking for jobs. I've never seen it like this ever, where we have positions and we've heard of places that have closed. They weren't expecting to be closed, and they just closed. A store had closed that day just because they couldn't get anybody to come to work to that day. I've never seen that happen where it wasn't related to a widespread flu outbreak or something like that. This was just a matter of they just closed because nobody would come to work to that day. Businesses won't last very long if that trend continues.
I just want to make mention, sometimes it's easy to isolate and look at one thing over here and one thing over here. And our country is so complicated with its politics these days. But, one of the things that I found really interesting looking at this issue of, employers need people to hire and we just don't have enough. There's two factors that are kind of, fitting in there. One, in terms of our population as a country, we have much fewer people being born. And so, the generations at the lower end of the age group are just smaller than those who are retiring. And so that just from an economic standpoint, like higher birth rates in the baby boomer and the greatest generation, and then lower birth rates in my generation and younger, that's just going to affect the need for workers. So just a little plug, the National Immigration Forum did a report actually looking at these economic numbers and the fact that we have way more people heading towards retirement than being born, and just what that means for our future industries as well as the current ones looking for workers. It's called Room to Grow, and I'll make sure all the folks who've attended this get a copy of that. But, the other thing that's really interesting is, we have a lot of folks on our southern border currently asking for asylum. And one of the frustrating parts for a lot of us watching that is, I don't want to see coyotes getting money smuggling people across Mexico who are desperate. And so what if instead of somebody who's fleeing Guatemala or fleeing Honduras, fleeing gangs and cartels down there, what if they could secure a visa and actually fit a job that comes and serves, one of our communities like Orrville, Ohio? One, you've served our employers. You've also helped a family that is fleeing cartels, and many of those communities come from farming communities anyways. But then you've also undercut the cartels. So they're not making $10,000 off of a desperate person. Instead, that person gets to fly here with a visa in hand and begin to work. And so if we would just, kind of bring that into our conversations, that's something that, folks, wherever they stand on ideas on how to fix the border, it would hit a couple of our needs right there that I think all of us could get alongside.
Tina,
Christy,
I
that's a
heard
great point.
not just $10,000. I heard from $10,000 to $20,000. But these people, they sell their homes, they sell everything that they have there because they're desperate, sometimes for a job, sometimes to, like you said, go away from the violence, cartels, and so on.
Yeah, I just want to chime in. That's really an interesting idea and concept because oftentimes when somebody comes here and it's been facilitated by the cartel, they still owe the cartel once they get here. And that can lead to criminal activity that the person may otherwise not be wanting to be a part of. So that would circumvent that process. That's a very interesting, and I would support that concept.
So a couple more questions, and I think we're going to go slightly over 1 o'clock. I hope folks can stay with us because we also have some great questions. But what have been some of the value you've seen immigrants bring to your economy, and would you change anything? I'm going to mesh some of these questions together so I could still get your input. Some of these guys prepared for us.
I think just a mixture of folks that we have in town here. most recently, I guess, with our Hispanics, we have a restaurant called Que Pasa that is probably busier than any restaurant in town. So obviously, folks like the food that they make, and they're doing very well. They participated in our 4th of July parade every year, and one year did a float with the mariachi band, and everybody loved that. So again, I think our town just accepts people and for what they are, and we've become better for it.
Mm.
Yeah, I can keep talk about that. I know the manager really well, Miguel there. He help us on the work with Hispanics when we do fundraisers. He give us the food a little cheaper. We can make a little bit more money, to serve the community. I'll be doing his wedding in July as well. Like it's so a way that we work together, that we help each other. Like the mayor said, they serve good food, cheap, prices are really cheap there, and they always serve you like family. We have this family like relationship. It's here on our blood. We love to be in community. Like different foods, okay? Like when I was pastor of Salem, when we have our Sundays, our potlucks, different foods people bring, the Anglo Hispanics were so glad to have to trade, to be together, and to fellowship. I guess when we're open to the idea of living together in a world that we can help each other, like we're trying to do in Orrville with these guys, with the school and others, I guess everybody wins on this situation.
I'm going to dip into some of our, thank you so much for that. I'm going to dip into some of our questions just so we can get a couple of those in here before I know some of these folks are going to have to step off and go. Someone asked, what can organizations like faith-based groups, and I'm actually going to just expand it even beyond that. So what can organizations who are listening to this, I know we've got police chiefs who have tuned in, we've got pastors, we've got business leaders, we've got folks from city councils and some folks from the ag industry. What could different folks do to help move legislation forward? So from your perspective, you're a town that needs more labor. What would you encourage fellow Ohioans to do to help move things forward? And what can folks do in order to make that happen?
I guess as was mentioned earlier, we need to continue to talk to our representatives, although sometimes you feel like that doesn't go anywhere, but they have a tough job. They're all dealing with different circumstances than what we understand, I guess, but we want people to be able to do so legally. I wouldn't want the feeling of always having to look over behind my shoulder if I have a job here. We want people to be able to become part of the community, not just work. And I think that's hard for them to do. Language barrier is always an issue. I think that makes it hard for us, even if you see someone in a grocery store, to start a conversation, because you don't know if they're going to be able to speak English, and then it gets embarrassing because I can't speak Spanish and that sort of thing. So, I wave and we get a nod and that sort of thing, and that's all. But it can be better. I go back to just one experience, and I'll be quiet on this, but going back to the 70s when we had the Asians that were brought here. A couple of those kids grew up and were great friends with my kids. My two boys are, my wife and I have two sons. And one of them ended up getting married here to a local girl. They've got kids. They have a child in high school now. And last year he was nearly deported because he came here, I don't know, when he was 7 years old, and nobody ever got him legally admitted into the country. And so he's got a great job here at Venture Products. He's worked there for years. He's raising a family. And this country nearly sent him home to a place that wasn't his home anymore. He didn't know anybody back in Laos. He hadn't been there since he was 7 years old. His whole family came over here. And luckily with some help from Congressman Gonzalez's office and Congressman Renacci back when he was there, they were able to at least get that process started for him to legally get admitted. But I mean, they nearly sent the guy home or not home. And that's scary to me. Those aren't the kind of people we need to be shipping out of our country.
This gentleman that the mayor is referring, we worked together at Venture Products, okay? And I helped them as well later when his father-in-law called me for help to get the immigration law and all this. But you know, this is what shows like he was, I don't like to say the luck guy. I don't know, I don't believe in lucky, but he was blessed, let's say that, because he was in a family of a pastor, a guy that was knowing on the community that we could together helping him. Sometimes there's people invisible there that don't have this opportunity. For this reason, we want a broader immigration law, not just the agro and dreamers and others, but a broader, like the mayor said, people want to be here legally. What's the best way that they can have a driver license, that they can buy their car, have their insurance, and the insurance will be cheaper for everyone. Like, everything makes sense, but we need to convince our congressman in Washington that this will benefit our community. It's not benefit the mayor or me, it benefit the whole community. I guess the pressure needs to come from every part of the society, pastors in church, like the mayor and his friends, the chief of police, schools. I guess we need to pressure the congressman to vote, at least to have something. We need something. Thank you.
So I'll just finish that. Coming back to the question, what can organizations do to help with legislation with seasonal immigrant workforce? So really, it's a matter of overcoming anecdotal stories with facts and common sense. Really, it just boils down to that. A lot of times that you want to get the scary stories, and I'm going to talk from the law enforcement perspective, where they highlight one incident someplace several states away that happened that doesn't really ever happen to any degree, that it doesn't happen with every population of Americans. So I don't like seeing anything where numbers are skewed. If we're going to have to throw out 2020 numbers, because 2020 is just a bizarre year. But if you go back, crime has been going down, violent crime. It's not my statistics, these are the FBI statistics since the mid-90s. So I think if you're talking about appealing to legislators, one, they need to have the facts. The facts are this. And then two, do you want rising prices for everything? You can't continue to increase wages without increasing the cost of goods. It's a vicious cycle. You have to have people who are willing to do it, to do the hard work, to do the labor. We can't all be consumers and then import everything from overseas. That makes no sense. Common sense, anecdotal stories like you've heard today from us that says the vast majority of America, I suspect, is like Orrville. I think that wherever people are being honest, this is, and we've been, and the last thing I'll say on it is we've been through this before. We don't learn from history, but we've been through this before with mass migrations. That's what our country has been based on. And unfortunately, if we don't learn from history, we're going to make the same mistakes. I know that's a tired cliche, but if we isolate populations of people and we don't solve their problems, it's very predictable what new problems each community is going to have. We've seen those in the past. So Let's skip past that part and let's go straight to let's implement the solutions and move forward, and we all benefit.
That is a great word. I'm going to end there because that was so much wisdom from these three gentlemen. I'm going to invite my friend Craig to come back on and we will close this up. But Matt, Dave, and Geraldo, thank you so much for your wisdom and your time and just the way you serve Orrville. Every time I have my schmuckers, I'm going to think about that. But really appreciate you guys. And I'll let you know next time I'm passing through. We'll have to like grab lunch.
Thank you.
So you guys can turn off your cameras unless you want to stay in front or center stage. You're welcome to do that too. How we're going to close up today is just a couple application points for everyone. So Geraldo mentioned, what can we do in terms of contacting your members of Congress? I'd like to encourage everyone after this call to make a phone call. In fact, make 2 phone calls. So I would love you guys to contact Senator Portman's office and Senator Brown's office and encourage them to get behind passing an agricultural bill similar to the House, maybe with some adjustments that would have an earned legalization process for many of our current agricultural workers who have been serving us so hard during the pandemic, who have been essential workers, many of whom have been here for 10, 20 years, faithfully serving our farmers. And there's other things in that possibility that would just serve all of us better. But Geraldo brought up the fact that we need some long-term solutions in other areas of immigration, and Chief Matt talked about the same thing. And so I would encourage you don't have to have all the words, but to ask your legislators, to ask our 2 senators or whoever your House of Representatives person is. You can email me and I will find them for you if you don't know. But to ask them to get on board with some broad immigration reform, that we would have more visas, that folks could come here and work and fill these jobs, that it would help grow our economy, that it would give avenues for folks who are fleeing hard things to come in a regulated way. I will also send out the report that we've done about our room to grow, which deals with the economy and deals with our shrinking population and what that means for Americans everywhere across the country. But thank you so much for being with us. It has been such a joy to have you guys here and to have your time. I know that's so valuable. Craig, thank you so much for partnering with me on this. And if you have any last words to say for folks, what would you encourage them?
All I would say is there are active conversations going on in the Senate right now about a pragmatic series of first steps dealing with border management, dreamers, temporary protected status holders, and agricultural workers. This is one of the only opportunities that we're probably going to see for real bipartisan cooperation to move our nation forward. Now is the time. Senators Portman and Brown, lean on in, please, and help get this done in the interest of Ohio and in the interest of the nation.
All right, with that, I will end our webinar. This is recorded, and so those of you who have registered will get a copy of this, but feel free to share it. It's not closed, it's an open conversation for more folks to take part in. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure being with you today.